York City, mid-20th century. The headlines screamed of gangland violence, but the real power didn't lie with the men holding guns. It lay with the man holding the strings. Frank Costello. He was known as the Prime Minister of the Underworld, not for his brute force, but for his unmatched intellect, his political connections, and his genius for diplomacy. He was the mob boss who preferred a handshake to a hit, a quiet word to an open war. He built an empire not on fear alone, but on influence. He cultivated senators, judges, and police chiefs, turning raw criminal power into legitimate political leverage. He was the true embodiment of the invisible government. How did an Italian immigrant, a street tough from East Harlem, become the most politically connected mobster in American history? What was the secret to his unparalleled influence? And what fatal mistake almost cost him everything, exposing the hidden power brokers of a nation? His story begins in the turbulent, multi-ethnic melting pot of early 20th century New York. Francesco Castiglio was born in 1891 in the mountainous region of Calabria, Italy. At the age of 4, he arrived in New York City, eventually settling with his family in the bustling, impoverished streets of East Harlem. He soon adopted the Americanized name Frank Costello and, like many young men, found legitimate work scarce. He gravitated toward street gangs, quickly demonstrating a sharp mind and an innate ability to lead, but not through violence. He was a negotiator, a thinker. Costello eschewed the raw brutality of many of his peers. He saw opportunity in the numbers racket and illegal gambling. These were businesses that required intelligence, discretion, and the cultivation of relationships, not just brute force. His early associations were crucial. He befriended Lucky Luciano, another ambitious young gangster, and together they rose through the ranks, first in the notorious 5 Points gang, then independently. This alliance would be a defining force in American organized crime. Prohibition provided the ultimate opportunity. While others battled over liquor routes with Tommy guns, Costello focused on building networks. He saw the potential for vast profits in controlling not just the supply, but the very infrastructure of illegal vice. His genius lay in his ability to connect people. He was a master networker, bridging the divide between Italian, Jewish, and Irish gangs. He was the diplomat of the underworld, the man who could bring disparate factions to the table. This skill would become invaluable during the bloody Castellamarese War, a conflict that tore through New York's underworld. While other men fought and died, Costello and Luciano saw a chance to forge a new, more efficient, and less self-destructive criminal order. But how would they navigate this bloody landscape to build an empire of influence, not just violence? The Castellamarese War was a crucible. It pitted old-world traditions against modern pragmatism. Frank Costello, with his cool head and strategic mind, aligned perfectly with Luciano's vision for a unified, business-like mafia. While Luciano engineered the assassinations of the old bosses, Costello was busy building bridges. He cultivated relationships with Tammany Hall politicians, police officials, and judges. He understood that controlling the legal system was as important as controlling the streets. Costello became the contact man, the one who could open doors, fix problems, and ensure the mob's operations ran smoothly, protected by a network of bribed officials. He was the ultimate fixer. When Luciano established the Commission, the governing body of the American Mafia, Costello's role became even more critical. He was the liaison, the diplomat, the prime minister who ensured peace among the families and managed their vast, complex criminal enterprises. His power was quiet but absolute. He controlled the lucrative slot machine rackets, which he eventually moved to Louisiana to avoid New York's crackdown. He managed the relationships with labor unions, infiltrating them to control industries and siphon off vast sums of money. Costello's lifestyle reflected his personality, sophisticated, understated, and impeccably tasteful. He owned a luxurious apartment in the Waldorf Astoria, entertained dignitaries, and spent his evenings in exclusive clubs, never drawing unnecessary attention. He was the ultimate behind-the-scenes operator, pulling strings, forging alliances, and maintaining a delicate balance of power that allowed the American Mafia to thrive in an unprecedented era of peace and prosperity. For decades, this invisible government operated with impunity, but even the most carefully constructed facade eventually shows cracks. And for Frank Costello, those cracks began to appear with the rise of a tenacious senator, determined to expose the hidden architects of crime. How would the Prime Minister of the underworld handle being dragged into the unforgiving glare of the public spotlight? At the zenith of his power, Frank Costello was arguably the most influential man in the American underworld. His word was law, his network was vast, and his control extended far beyond the traditional criminal rackets. From his luxurious apartment in the Waldorf Astoria, he wielded immense power, making phone calls that could decide elections, influence judicial outcomes, and shift millions of dollars. He was the quiet CEO of a criminal conglomerate. His primary domains were gambling and political influence. He understood that a controlled, legitimate-looking gambling empire could generate vast, untraceable sums of money, which could then be used to corrupt officials and expand their reach. Costello projected an image of sophistication and respectability, often contributing to charities and maintaining a low public profile. But beneath the polished exterior lay the cold, calculating mind of a mob boss who would not hesitate to use intimidation and violence when absolutely necessary. This carefully constructed world of hidden influence began to crumble with the advent of live television and the relentless pursuit of Senator Estes Kefauver. The Kefauver Committee launched a series of televised hearings, determined to expose organized crime to the American public. For the first time, the American people would see the faces and hear the voices of the men who secretly ruled their cities. And Frank Costello, the Prime Minister of the Underworld, would be called to testify. Costello, ever the strategist, initially refused to have his face shown on camera, only allowing his hands to be filmed. He spoke in a gravelly voice, trying to project an image of an ordinary businessman. But his words, and his obvious discomfort, captivated the nation. The hearings exposed the true extent of his power and connections, making him a reluctant celebrity. But in doing so, they also marked the beginning of the end for his unique style of mob leadership. He had been dragged into the light, and the shadows were closing in. The Kefauver hearings, while not immediately leading to convictions, shattered Costello's carefully constructed image of an invisible man. He was now known to millions, and the pressure from law enforcement intensified dramatically. With Lucky Luciano deported, Costello had become the de facto head of the Luciano family. But his old rival, Vito Genovese, long ambitious and resentful of Costello's power, saw his chance to seize control. Genovese, a ruthless old-school gangster, despised Costello's preference for negotiation over violence and his willingness to work with non-Italians. He wanted the top spot, and he was willing to kill for it. On May 2, 1957, as Costello returned to his apartment at the Waldorf Astoria, a gunman working for Genovese ambushed him, shooting him in the head. Miraculously, Costello survived, the bullet only grazing his scalp. The assassination attempt was a clear message. Costello, tired of the constant pressure, the betrayals, and the threat of violence, decided to step down. He negotiated a retirement deal, handing over control of the family to Genovese. He largely withdrew from the daily operations of the mob, choosing a quieter life, though he still retained some influence and was occasionally consulted. He focused on his legitimate investments and lived a life of comfortable retirement. He passed away peacefully in 1973, a rare feat for a man of his stature in the underworld. His reign as the Prime Minister of the underworld was over, but his legacy as the most sophisticated and politically influential mobster would endure. What lasting impact did this quiet giant leave on the Mafia and on America? Frank Costello proved that brute force wasn't the only path to power in the Mafia. He demonstrated the immense potential of political influence, sophisticated networking, and an almost corporate approach to organized crime. His life story is a masterclass in strategic thinking, diplomacy, and the art of navigating complex power structures. He was a gangster, yes, but also a political operator and a shrewd businessman who reshaped the very nature of American organized crime. The Prime Minister of the Underworld taught the Mafia that true power often operates in the shadows, not in the spotlight. His reign was a testament to the enduring influence of a quiet word, a well-placed bribe, and the ultimate power of those who master the art of connection.